Hello there, it's Elissa again with Camp Healing Hearts Online 2021, and this video is talking a little bit more about coping. So this is for week 2 as we're discussing our feelings and coping. So if you go in your book, it should be the second section. You'll see week 2, and these should be towards the back. A couple of papers I provided to you that connect to us talking about coping. So when I say coping, some of you may know what that means or have an idea of what that means to you, but I want you to think about that. What does that mean to cope? C-O-P-E. What does coping mean? So feel free, if you want to take some time, think about it, write about it, maybe draw a picture of what you think that means. Feel free to pause the video and take time as you try to think about, what does coping mean? So hopefully you took the time you needed to think about, what does coping mean? And what I tell people is coping is a way to find how we can help manage things that are difficult, things that might be hard, things that might make us feel certain ways, but it's a way of dealing with our emotions. So coping is using different things to help us. So maybe if we're not feeling how we want to feel, or we don't like how we're feeling, or things that are going on. For instance, for many of you watching this video, it's coping with the reality that somebody very special to you, and or maybe people, animal or animals, that you're close to are no longer here because they died. And you're trying to learn, how do I cope with this? How all of these feelings that I'm feeling. So hopefully you went through and did the activities we provided for talking about how we feel and what that looks like, so that you can think about how you've been feeling since your person, people, animal, and or animals died. And think about, all right, what do I need to help myself cope with all these feelings that I have, with all the things going on in my life? Because there might have been a lot of changes that happened, and you're trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? So these couple of sheets I provided give some ideas of different things that might be able to help. So there's the one sheet that says what helps, and that has a lot of different ideas in general for any type of emotion or thing that's going on. So maybe you have somebody you can talk to about it. Not everyone likes to talk, so some ideas are maybe dancing, maybe singing, listening to music, watching a movie, usually a funny one, help us laugh. Laughter makes us feel a lot better. Writing, it could be you write a letter, maybe you use your journal. You can use things in your grief toolbox like the squeeze ball. This one looks probably different than the one you got this year. Maybe blowing some bubbles. Could be drawing, maybe playing a sport, exercising, going for a bike ride, maybe you like to run or go for walks, maybe doing some yoga. Hopefully either you have or will be participating with us, as we have somebody who's going to do grief yoga with us this year, which is another way to help cope with all the things you're feeling. Crying can be helpful. Reading, hugs. Say back, like we said here in the Rabbit Listen book I mentioned, it talks a lot about that sometimes a hug really helps. It's not necessarily that we need to talk, scream, or anything like that. We just need someone to be there. So thinking about if you just need someone to be there for you, someone who you can trust and know that is there for you. And then there's space, you can always add your own. Then there's 2 different sheets that talk about for when you get sad and when you get angry. Because sometimes, depending on the particular or certain or type of feeling that you're having, it might be that one of these might work better than the others. So this has a lot of the same ideas as what helps, But for example, like when you get angry, sometimes people feel a lot of energy moving through their body and they need to get rid of it. So sometimes running can be really helpful. Or if you're able to and allowed in your home, getting some pots out and pounding them, or punching your pillow, screaming into your pillow, making sure that you're doing something safe. And that might be a conversation you have with those that you live with as to, when I'm feeling this way and I need to get this out of my body, what can I do that's safe, that's not gonna hurt me, not hurt anybody else? So this has a couple of different ideas for that, with both getting sad and angry and thinking about, what it is that helps you. And coping is something that's very important. That's why it's part of talking about our feelings, because we need to find a way to be able to cope with those, because there's nothing wrong with how you feel. We feel what we feel because of experiences and what's happened to us. It's how do I manage these emotions? You don't want to ignore them. You don't want to push them down. That's not a helpful way to deal with what you're feeling. It may seem easier to do that, but actually what happens is it comes out in different ways. Ways you may not even realize. But when we don't realize or take time to look at what we're feeling and figure out why we're feeling it, it ends up being more harmful to us and make things more complicated and more frustrating oftentimes if we don't acknowledge or talk about or find a way to tell someone, express. It's not that you have to actually talk to somebody, or you may even say, I don't know what I'm feeling. Can someone help me? And going to someone that you trust to try and figure out what it is you're feeling. I don't know if I mentioned this in a video you've already watched or a video in the future, to be honest. But there is a good book that I like to recommend called Listening to My Body, which talks about a way to try to learn, because emotions feel certain ways in our body. I know some people talk about feeling really hot when they get angry. Like I said before, the feeling that kind of like an energy is racing through you, can't sit still if you're nervous. When you're sad, just kind of feeling heavy. Maybe your eyes feel heavy. There's all different kinds of things that our body feels. And if you think about, like when we're hungry, what does our body feel like? When we're tired, what does our body feel like? So it's learning to get in touch and figure out what it is we feel in our body can help us understand what we're feeling. So I hope that these were helpful to you. And like I said, please think of any particular other ideas that weren't mentioned here and try to figure out, what works for me. Maybe try some of these out and see if it's helpful. Do them together with maybe another family member, friends, or those that you live with. Trying to find what works for you. Some people like to use this and, circle what works for them, or if they tried it, say, you know what, this didn't work for me, so let me try something else. Sometimes it takes time to find what will work for you, and that's perfectly fine. That's okay. So I hope that these were helpful, and that you're able to find some ways to help you cope. And if these ideas don't help, maybe thinking of some other things, or even sharing in our group. If you haven't done that, if you watch this video after we did group, maybe those ideas were helpful. Or if you haven't watched this, trying to figure out some ideas from other people. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about in group is, coping with what we feel. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you for week 3, remembering and commemorating.